Hello, welcome to my studio. This is your instructor Linda, and this is video workshop number 5 on sprigs. If you have not watched my previous videos, I do recommend that you go back and watch them first, as it's easiest to learn and understand from my videos when they are watched in sequence. So in this workshop, we're going to be learning 4 different types of sprigs: the heart sprig, the angled sprig, the reverse sprig, and the double reverse sprig. Of these 4 different types of sprigs, this one here, which is the reverse sprig, is done on a single row comb. The remaining 3, the heart sprig, the angled sprig, and the double reverse sprig, are done on a 2-rowed comb, like this one, where it has 2 rows of teeth. In this video, I'm going to be using this particular comb. However, if you have this comb with the narrow spacing on one side and the wide spacing on the other side, it can be done with this comb as well, albeit with a little bit more difficulty because the longer teeth do tend to obstruct the looping a little bit. This comb and this comb here are exactly the same, with the difference being the size and the spacing of the teeth and the pins. When you're quilling, you can get larger elements by using the larger comb and smaller elements using the smaller comb. Regardless of whether you use the large one or the small one, the theory is exactly the same. It is looped the same way. The size is just simply determined by the size of the comb that you use. So let's begin with the easiest sprig to do, which is done on a double comb. This one here, the heart sprig. So let's put aside these other sprigs for later. We will get back to them. So heart sprig looks like this. It is called a heart sprig because it kind of makes a heart shape when you finish the sprig. So let's start by drawing the looping diagram for the heart sprig. So in the heart sprig, let's draw in the 2 rows of combs, pins here. Okay, so here's the left row, here's the right row. And just for ease of looping, I am going to designate this as the left row, and this is the right row, with this being pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the right hand side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to put pin number 0 right here, which is the starting point of our sprig. So now in the previous workshop, workshop number 4, I talked about a term called an anchor. And an anchor is the start, the middle, and the end of your looping when you're looping on your comb. The sprig does not have an anchor. It has an equivalent to an anchor, which is called an axis. And the axis is the point where you start and return to. The difference between an anchor and an axis is an anchor is a point, or rather a pin on your quilling comb, whereas an axis is a row of pins. So when you're doing the sprig is actually comprised of 2 parts, a left one and a right one. So you actually have to make 2 pieces before connecting them together in the center to get the full sprig. The left and the right is done exactly the same way. You just simply flip it over when you attach it to get the other side. If you are right-handed, your axis will generally be the row on the right side of your comb. This side right here. If you're left-handed, most likely the axis will be the left row of combs, or this side. So if you're left-handed, you can do exactly the same thing as me with the right-handed techniques, just simply mirror the numbers. Okay? So let's start with the tail of the sprig, which is the stem right here. So to start the sprig, regardless of which sprig you're doing, the first loop is always done between the number 0 pin and the number 1 pin. So on the comb, here is the number 1 pin, or sorry, the 0 pin right there where that 0 indication is. And then here's pin number 1 on the top and pin number 1 on the bottom, depending on which way you hold your comb, right? So in this comb, you will start your sprig in the number 0 point. If you're using this comb, your starting point is actually in the center of the comb, where the narrow and the wide spacing meet. Okay, so on this one, let's start at the 0 pin. In theory, you can start at any part of your comb in order to do the sprig. If you're doing a sprig and you want to do a super long one, say so that you can curl it in a circle to make a wreath, then you would want to start your sprig actually at the end of the comb so that you can use the full length of your comb in order to do the sprig. If you're doing it that way, you do want to remember the numbers on the pins and make sure that you are using the appropriate pins for the ending point and the beginning point. So if you're using the full length of the comb, then you want to flip the comb to the other number where the pin starts at number 1. So here where I'm starting at pin number 0, you're starting here at pin number 1. If that's too complicated, simply just forget about it for now and start at pin 0 right here. Okay, so in the heart sprig, you want to start by going in between the pin number 0 and pin number 1. Then you want to swing to the other side and go around pin number 1 on the left-hand side. Then you swing around to the right-hand side and you go to pin number 2. And then left-hand side to pin number 3, 4, 5, and so forth till you finish. So the order of the pins is going through the 0 and the 1, looping around left 1, then looping around right 2, left 3, right 4, left 5, and so forth, till you finish the sprig to the desired length. When you're finishing the sprig, it is helpful to have a piece of paper on the side so that you can jot down what number of pin that you stopped at. That way, when you're looping, in case you forget, you don't have to go back and recount the other half of the sprig that you did to see how many loops that you did. Okay, so let's begin with the heart sprig with a piece of yellow paper. All right, here we go. So when you're quilling the sprig, I do like to quill with my paper at the base of the comb. It makes it so that the spine or the alignment of the paper is straight, and so that when you attach the spine on, that you don't get a crooked or wobbly spine. I do know many people who do quill at the tip of their comb, but I would advise on the sprig to quill at the base in order to keep the spine straight. Okay, so here we go. I have left a little tail here, and that little tail is where I grip the paper so that it's not sliding all over the place. And this little tail will also become the stem in your heart sprig. So you do want to make sure that you leave enough of a stem. If you want a longer stem, you can simply leave more paper, right? But I'm just going to do a moderately short stem. So here I've started going through pin number 0 and number 1. So I've gone between these two pins, going around pin number 1. And then on this side, here is pin number 2. So I'm going to loop around pin number 2. And then on the left-hand side, I'm going to go across pin number 3. And let's continue to the end. So on this sprig, I'm going to loop up to a nice even number for myself to remember. I'm going to loop it to number 13. Easy to remember. Okay, so when you're looking at the loops in your heart sprig, like this, if you flip the comb to the side, you will be able to tell if you've done the weaving properly, if you have one pin covered, and then one pin uncovered, one pin covered, one uncovered, and so forth, till your very last pin. So let's check the other side. Yes, I see cover, uncover, cover, uncover, cover, uncover. Okay, good, perfect. So it looks like I have got the loop properly done. So now what we're going to do is we're going to form the half of the sprig. Now you can use your stylus to apply the glue. I'm going to glue it directly from the bottle. Generally, I do recommend a fine point nozzle here with a finer gauge so that you're not getting an excessive amount of glue. If you do get an excessive amount of glue, what will happen is the glue will get all over your comb and will end up on your project, as well as kinking and obstructing your project if there happens to be a lot of glue on your project. Okay, so here I've put a blob of glue on each of the bumps on the paper on the axis side, so not the other side, the axis side. And I've put a little bit of glue as well at the bottom of the stem in a vertical line. And what you want to do is you want to fold over this piece and glue the center piece that goes across your axis onto all of those little bumps that you've done in the loop. So let's take a look at this, and let's see if I can kind of slide this to the tip of my comb so that it's easier for you to see how I weaved it. So if we kind of take a look at this weaving, see, it's like running around a pylon in gym. It's kind of a zigzag pattern. So going from one comb to one comb higher, and then one comb higher on the other side in a zigzag pattern, like that. Okay, so I am going to put this aside and I'm going to allow for the sprig to dry. One of the worst things about the sprig is being impatient. If you're impatient and then you try to remove the sprig before there is complete adhesion between the strip on the spine and the little bumps on it, then you will end up with your sprig falling apart. Here's one that I've done as a demonstration. See, it's completely exploded and fallen apart. So you do want to make sure that your sprig is dry. Now, if you have the luxury of having two combs, like I do, then you can simply leave this comb aside to dry. By the time you finish the other sprig, this one should be dry. If you don't have two combs, then the option is to either wait a little while and do something else while this is drying, or you can flip the comb over and start doing the sprig on this side, as long as you can ensure that you're not going to bump this side while you're doing that and have it fall off. So I'm going to put it aside to dry, and I'm going to do the second half of my sprig. So let's see if we can review that. We have the paper, and we are going through pin number 0 and pin number 1. So here's my little tail on the other side. We're going to loop around number 1 on the left-hand side. We're going to loop around the 2 on the right-hand side, the number 3 on the left-hand side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the pattern you want to do. Now, I stopped last time at pin number 13, and I specifically chose 13 because 13 is an easy number to remember. Probably not for the best of reasons, but it is the easiest number to remember. So here I've gone and I have finished all of the weaving up to pin number 13. So I'm going to flip it to the other side. Here we go. And blob, 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 down. Okay, fold it down. And so this is the reason why you want to quill at the base of your comb rather than at the tip of your comb. because if you've weaved it on the base of your comb, the comb acts as a stop and levels your paper so that when you're folding over the paper that it is exactly the same level as the loops, right? Keeps it so that the spine doesn't wobble, and it makes a nicer looking and more symmetrical sprig. Okay, so let's make sure that this is glued down. I usually just kind of run my fingers along the axis, and that helps to adhere the glue down. Okay, so this side should be dry now, so I am going to carefully remove it. So if you remove it with your fingers, be careful not to grip it too hard and to yank it off, because you can damage it. If you have two combs, then you can simply use your other comb to push it off, okay? Otherwise, you can also use your tweezer, as I taught in the previous class. So here we go. We've got 1/2 of the sprig. When you take the sprig off the comb, it'll kind of do this curly thing. And don't worry too much about that. Once you glue it spine to spine like that, it will straighten out. Okay, I wonder if the other side's dry yet. Let's see if we can get it off without exploding it. So here we go. Let's move our sprig. I'm going to use my comb here and remove it. There we go. All right, so it looks like it kept together. So here is the part where we connect the two spines together. So you want to put some glue right along this spine here, and you want to take the other side and put them spine to spine, preferably with the bumps aligning. Okay. So at this point in time, once you've got them attached together, there's two options. You can either hold it with your fingers to kind of gently compress it down to let it dry, or if you have these quilling clamps, very useful things, I totally recommend them, then you can use the clamp to hold your sprig together. Okay, so now when we were looking at that, that doesn't quite look like this one, does it? It's not a heart shape. So there is a way to turn this into a heart shape in the final step. However, you do have to make sure that your glue is completely dry on the spine before you do the final formation. Otherwise, you'll end up with an exploded piece like this one. Okay, so let's set this aside for it to dry. And while we're doing that, let's practice the heart sprig again. So now in this particular heart sprig, I did the pins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a very easy to remember order. However, you don't have to loop it at exactly this level. So let's take a look at this heart sprig compared to this heart sprig here. As you can see, this heart sprig has the hearts much more widely spaced than that one. So how did I achieve this one over this one? Well, let me show you. So let's remove this sheet. There's our cheat sheet. And I'm going to grab a fresh sheet right here. And let's draw in the pins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is our left-hand side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here is our right-hand side. Right hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's put our starting point here of 0. Okay. So here is how I did this one with the wider spacing. So if we compare it to the previous one, where we've looped in numerical order, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what you're going to do is you're going to skip some needles in between. See how there's one needle here that you skipped? In order to get wider, you skip more needles. So let me show you what I mean. So let's begin the same on this one as looping the first bump on pin number 1. Now normally we would go around pin number 2 and swing around to pin number 3. But what we're going to do in this case is we're going to pass that, and we're going to go between pin 3 and 4 and swing around pin number 4 on the other side. See how in this one there is 1 needle that we skipped? In this one we have skipped 2 needles. So likewise, when you continue, you would skip 2 needles and loop around pin number 7. So, and so forth. And you would continue the pattern till the sprig is to the desired length. Okay? So when you get these bumps on here, the bumps will be further apart. And then you can get this sprig as opposed to this sprig. Okay, so while we're talking, I think this should have dried. So I am going to take it apart and form it into the actual heart sprig, which looks like that. Okay, let's put that to the side. And okay, so at this point we get to see if we won the lottery or not. Okay, so in order to get the heart sprig from this ziggy-zaggy pattern, what you want to do is you want to hold the sprig by the stem at the bottom, and with your thumb and forefinger you want to put it together so that it is smaller than the width of the sprig, and you stroke it upwards like that. There's your heart sprig. Okay, now preferably you stroke it evenly on the left and the right side. In this one I have gone a little bit cockeyed. Fortunately, we can kind of play around with it a little bit and get it to be more heart-shaped, right? Very hard to do this while you're trying to angle it for the video. Okay, so here we go. Here is heart sprig. That is the easiest one to do. Here's the pattern for it, looping like a pylon. Okay? All right, so we are going to move on to the next sprig, which is going to be the angled sprig. Now, I tend to find that for most of my students, the angled sprig is probably the hardest of all the different types of sprigs to do. Theoretically, it's very easy, and usually once I start the loops, my students can continue and don't have an issue following along. However, starting it always seems to be the problem. So again, like the heart sprig, let's draw out the diagram for the angled sprig. Okay, so like the heart sprig, the angled sprig starts at the pin number 0, and you still loop through from the other side through and between pin number 0 and pin number 1. So it starts exactly out the same. Let's draw the diagrams. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is our left row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is our right. Let's number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's put in our number 0. Okay, so in the angled sprig, you start by going through the 0 and the 1, and you loop around the pin number 1. Now normally in the heart sprig, you would loop around here and go between pin number 1 and pin number 2. In the angled sprig, you actually go back down and you go back through the same place that you looped to the left-hand side. You can see, you start by going through between 0 and 1, you loop over number 1, and then you go in between 0 and 1. See? Both on the same gap. Then the next part, you go through the loop that is adjacent to it, right? So the space that's adjacent to it, between pin number 1 and pin number 2. Then you loop over to pin number 2, and then you go through the same place that you looped over, so between 0 and 1. So here we go. Let's continue the loop like that. What I tend to find is helpful sometimes is if you're not sure how to loop the pattern, do what I did, draw it on a piece of paper and then loop it. Once you've looped it, then you can see which pins to use, whether it's left 3 or right 4, and you can follow the pattern to see that you've looped it correctly or incorrectly on your comb. Okay, so here is the comb pattern. Let's see if we can repeat it on the comb. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm doing the twigs is I want to leave lots of slack when I'm looping. Just because if you leave only a little bit of paper, your fingers kind of get in the way and there's not enough paper to comfortably loop. So I like to leave a nice long loop. So here we are, we've gone between pin 0 and 1. We're going to loop around pin number 1 and then loop it back through the same side. So if I see that, here's pin number 1, here's pin number 2. These two are coming out of the same gap. Okay, so now we're going to go around that pin number 1 there on the right hand side, and we're going to loop to the left hand side going around pin number 2, coming back and coming out of the same spot as that piece. Okay, so if I was to continue looping this, and I'm going to loop it to a number that I can easily remember. Let's go lucky number 8. Okay, so here we go. I've gone to pin number 8 here. Okay, and to check to see if you have done it properly on this loop, you want to look for a consistent pattern. So in this case, all of my needles are covered. If you see a silver needle there that's not covered and all the other ones are covered, that means you've missed a pin somewhere. And likewise on this side, all of the pins are covered. Okay. So to glue it down, exactly like in the heart sprig, you want to put a little dot of glue on every single bump where there is paper. Okay. Okay. And again, try not to use an excessive amount of glue because you will get it all over your comb. So let's stroke it down to adhere the glue. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can pull this to the tip of the comb so it's easier for us to see the pattern. Here we go. All right, so that pattern looks like this pattern on the paper. So you're looping, kind of going forward 1, back 1, forward 1, back 1. Yeah? Okay. So here is pin number 8. So that's an easy number for us to remember. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab another comb. And we're going to go between pin number 0 and pin number 1. Going to loop back through so it comes out the same spot that it came in going to the other side. Okay, loop, loop. Okay. Quilling comb is one of my favorite types of quilling, if not my favorite type. Once you kind of get the hang of all the loops and you can get into the rhythm, it's actually very therapeutic to do. Okay, so let's check. Every single pin there is covered. Every single pin there is covered, and I've finished at needle number 8 so that it matches the other side. So let's go glue, 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 glue on each of the bumps. Okay. Let's hold that for a couple of seconds. All right, so I'm going to leave that one to dry, and I'm going to see if I can remove this one off this comb. So you can either remove it carefully using your fingers, you can also remove it using your tweezers, or you can also remove it using the other comb. There we go. All right, here is 1/2 of the angled sprig. All right. So, should we risk it? Is this dry? Let's try it. So I remove this one with just my fingers. Ooh. Okay, well, it didn't explode, so must have been at least semi-dry. Here we go. So we're going to glue along the spine. Right. And here we go. So again, the option is you can hold it down with your fingers till you feel that it's dry, or if you have the quilling clamps, then your life is easier. Let's clamp them and set it aside to dry. Okay, so there we go. We've set it aside to dry. I'm going to move these two combs out of the way so that we have more room to work here. Okay, so like the heart sprig, you can change the appearance of the angled sprig by determining the number of combs, teeth that you skip on the left-hand side when you're looping through. So let's take a look at this one here and this one here. So if we take a look at these, and it's quite apparent in this one here, is the more needles that you skip, the longer each of the fronds on the sprig is. So here it is, small, medium, rather large. Okay, so here we go. Let's draw in the pins again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, if you're unsure of the pattern and you want to kind of work it out on your brain, then do what I've done here, is just simply draw it on a piece of paper, and you will have a diagram in front of you to tell you exactly which pins you need to go around and in which direction. So there's 7, and here's our starting pin with 0. Okay, so to loop a longer leaf, you want to change the pin number where you make the first loop. So in this particular example, we went between 0 and 1, and we looped around pin number 1 on this side. If you want to make it longer, you go in between the 0 and the 1, and you loop around a higher numbered needle. So here we go. I've looped around number 2. In this one, we looped around number 1. In this one, we looped around number 2. When you're coming back, you still go back through the same opening as the start when you swung to the left-hand side. So you can see, looped through the 0 and 1, looped around the 2, and then went back between the 0 and 1. So then the next one, we go and we loop around the number 3, right? Between 1 and 2, loop around 3, and come back between 2 and 1, the same place in which you've entered. Okay, so there we go, and as you can see, the pattern continues. Let's go around the correct pin, Linda. Okay, so then once you've got that, then you can go down the spine to make your sprig. Now, this particular one, I went directly to pin number 1. This one, I went to pin number 2. This one, just to show you how exaggerated you can go, I started and I looped directly to pin number 4. Now, the problem with doing a large loop like this is the paper becomes very hard to loop and to get between the thin spacing in the comb. So if you have to do more than 3 skips or 4 skips, this is actually very hard to do, and you're likely to get very frustrated. So if you need a super long frond on your sprig, I do recommend, instead of doing it on a quilling comb, to go directly to quilling board for this one. Okay, so let's take a look at our twig, or sprig rather, sorry, and see if it is good. Right, okay, yeah, that looks like it's dry. On the angled sprig, you don't have to stroke it at all. When you take it off of your comb, it should have the correct spacing. Okay, so that is 2 types of sprigs. I'm going to now go to the sprig that is done on the single comb, which is the reverse sprig. And at the same time, I'm going to also do the double reverse sprig. So